Animal breeder can buy 4 types of food for Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs. Each case of brand A contains 35 units of fiber, 40 units of protein, and 40 units of fat. Each case of brand B contains 140 units of fiber, 120 units of protein, and 120 units of fat. Each case of brand C contains 385 units of fiber, 320 units of protein, and 340 units of fat. Each case of brand D contains 280 units of fiber, 420 units of protein, and 220 units of fat. How many cases of each brand should the breeder mix together to obtain a food that provides 5,180 units of fiber, 4,360 units of protein, and 4,520 units of fat? We're going to start off by using this information in the problem. Let X represent the number of cases of brand A, Y represent the number of cases of brand B, Z represent the number of cases of brand Z, and W represent the number of cases of brand D. There are 4 ways in which the breeder can mix brands to obtain a food that provides 5,180 units of fiber, 4,360 units of protein, and 4,520 units of fat. Now, the part of this where it says there are 4 ways that the breeder can mix this, that's an entirely different problem. We're not going to worry about that in the scope of this particular problem. We are given the fact that there's 4 different ways, so we need to find the 4 different combinations. Now, the textbook would have you go ahead and use matrix application. You'd write out the matrix, and then you would solve it, and then you would use that. What we're going to do is we're going to generate the equations, and then we're going to use Wolfram Alpha to solve the system of equations, which will make life a little bit easier for us. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and write out all of this information in a way that's easy to digest and easy to put together so that I can create a system of equations. You want to understand and look at this stuff and say, okay, each case of brand A, okay, so this is brand A, and brand A has 3 different components. And we're going to go ahead and let brand A be represented by X. So let's go ahead and write this information out. We'll go ahead and say brand A, and I'm going to use an arrow to represent that I'm going to use X. And remember, there's 3 different components to this: fiber, protein, and fat. So we'll go ahead and write 35 units of fiber, and we'll represent that with a 35X. Then there are 40 units of protein, and we'll represent that with 40X. And then finally, we're going to have 40 units of fat, and we'll represent that with 40X also. Now, we're going to use each one of these values in a different equation. So don't worry or don't get confused that they're all 3 X's. I'm going to do that for each one of the 3 remaining brands. Okay, and now we've gone ahead and written out brand B, which would be Y. 140 units of fiber is 140Y. 120 units of protein is 120Y. 120 units of fat is 120Y also. And now we're going to go on to brand C and then brand D. Okay, now you see that brand C has been broken down as Z, and there's 385 units of fiber, and we represent it as 385Z. 320 units of protein is represented as 320Z, and 340 units of fat is represented as 340Z. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for brand D. Okay, so now we have everything broken down, and what we're going to do next is we're going to mix these together, because that's going to be the next part of this particular problem, is the fact that there are 4 ways that were indicated in the problem, and they're going to mix the brands to provide the following. Once the mix is created, it will yield 5,180 units of fiber, 4,360 units of protein, and 4,520 units of fat. So we go ahead and we start off with fiber. The fiber is going to be 5,180 units. So we're going to go ahead and mix this part right here, and this part right here to yield 5,180 units of fiber. So we end up with 35x. We're going to have 140y. We're going to have 385z. And then 280w. And we're going to add those together. And the sum of those four items are going to yield the total units of fiber, which is 5,180. So this gives us one equation and three unknowns. Now, we need to go ahead and create three other equations based off the protein, or I should say two other equations for a total of three based off the protein and fat. And this is what they're going to look like. Okay, now we see that we have another equation, 40x plus 120y plus 320z plus 220w is equal to 4,360. Now that's my equation for protein. And now we're going to go ahead and build an equation that will represent units of fat, and that's going to be equal to 4,520. And then we'll go ahead and assign the 40 units, the 120 units, the 340 units, and the 240 units to this next equation. And we see that the last equation is 40x plus 120y plus 340z plus 240w is equal to 4,520. Now what I want to do is not use matrices to solve this. Instead, we're going to go to wolframalpha.com, and this is going to be what the website looks like. You'll see that the URL is simply www.wolframalpha.com. And here it says enter what you want to calculate or know about. This is a mathematical search engine, and it's an incredible tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in the three equations separated by a comma. Okay, you'll see in the enter field here, or the input field, I've got the first equation. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to separate it by a comma sign. You'll notice that I accidentally capitalized the z. We're going to go back and make it a lowercase z. Shouldn't make too much of a difference, but I just want to be consistent with what I've written down in the notes. So we'll go ahead and type in the next two equations, and then we'll hit the equal sign in the input field. Okay, so now you see that we've got all three equations entered into the input field. You want to make sure that you check very carefully that you've typed this in accurately. So then you left click the equal sign, and then Wolfram Alpha is going to calculate. And it may take a minute or so depending upon how fast your computer is and how fast your internet connection is. Now you'll notice that there's a number of different things that are listed here. And what I really want to do, and once I have all these calculations, you'll see all these different answers. And what you want to do is you want to key on the real solution here. And we're going to use this to go ahead and finish the calculations that we need. And I'm going to copy this into the notes. And this is going to be what we use to help us generate the solution. So remember, this is our system of equations, and this is going to be our solution. You'll notice that x is equal to w here, which means that no matter what I do, x and w will be the exact same number. And when you're looking at the particular problem that you're working on, there's going to be parts of it, for example, like this. This will be the first part that you're going to do. And it says if w equals 0, the solution is, and then there's three empty boxes here. And they're going to represent x, y, and z. This will be x, this will be y, and this will be z. And this last one is going to represent the w that we are using. So if x is equal to w for this particular problem, That means if w is equal to 0, x will also be equal to 0. Then next we're going to be looking at y, and y is equal to 15 minus 5w. Now remember that w is equal to 0 in this particular case. And if w is equal to 0, we'll go ahead and we will finish solving the problem. And this will be y is equal to 15 minus 5, and we're going to multiply that by w, which in this particular case is 0, and therefore we know that y will be equal to 15. So then we'll put 15 right in here. Okay. And then the next part is going to be z, and z is going to be equal to 0 plus 8, which is going to be 0 plus 8, and therefore z is equal to 8, and that will go in here. And then we're going to want to put this into our solution or into the problem. And this is the problem, so we'll go ahead and we'll type in 0. We'll tab over to the next one, type in 15, tab to the next one, type in 8, and then we'll check the answer. We get a good job, and we move on to the next one. If w is equal to 1, the solution is. So the next one is if w is equal to 1, the solution is. Once again, we'll go ahead and say, okay, x is equal to w, so therefore x will be equal to 1. And then for the next one, we'll go ahead and write in y is equal to 15 minus 5 times what w is, which in this particular case is going to be 1. And then we go ahead and solve for y, and y will be equal to 15 minus 5, which will be 10. And then we go ahead and do the same thing for z. Z is going to be equal to 1 plus 8, and therefore z will be equal to 9. And we go ahead and write our numbers in. So x is equal to 1, y is equal to 10, and z is going to be equal to 9. And then we will type this into the solution set also inside MyMathLab. And we have 1, tab 10, tab 9, and then we go ahead and check answer. And we're going to do that for the next two possibilities, okay? And we keep going. We're going to have if w is equal to 2, and then if w is equal to 3. And using the same technique that we've just used, we'll end up with 2, 5, and 10. We'll check that, and then we'll do the next one. If w is equal to 3, we'll have 3, 0, and 11. And we will check that answer, and we are finished with the problem. And here we see all the work for this particular problem at the end. Now really the benefit of using Wolfram Alpha just simplifies a lot of the calculations. Solving it using a matrix, it can be done, and it can be done if you understand it very well. Unfortunately, sometimes it can take a while to solve using a matrix, so it's actually nice to go ahead and use the technology.